Hi, welcome to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michele. This is the show where we talk about exceptional human encounters, the people who make them happen, and the actions it takes to create them. Now, this show is the lighter side version of me, and there's a heavier side, a little deeper side that usually comes out in the monthly emails that I send, and yesterday was no exception. I had a lot of heavy shares in it. If you're interested in reading it and you're not on my email list, the link is in my bio right now on Instagram at Relate with Steph. So I don't know about you, but I always feel better once I release what I'm feeling. Yet to get there, I often need some assistance, sometimes a lot of assistance. I'll talk things out with people that I know, and I'll do research. I'm sure you don't realize this by watching this show, but I am for sure a data and research nerd. And I say nerd with love and admiration for my fellow learners, researchers, innovators, theorists, who are committed to work even when others don't quite understand why they're so committed to it. My work is based on knowing what things are in our culture and tech that are draining our abilities to love and relate with each other. The layers of epidemics in our politics, technology, healthcare, pop culture, and mental health awareness are creating an important tipping point that will determine what the future of human relationships look and feel like. Yet I am not leaned into the doom, the overwhelming doom sometimes, and gloom of all that. What I want is simply this. You know that feeling that you get when you hear a song or you connect to a piece of art or see an art form and you're like, man, this thing really gets me. I really feel this. Like, I'm just so connected to this. I want and believe in that feeling, and I want all of us to experience it. I want you to experience the wholeness you feel when you feel that song that inspires you. I want you to feel that in friendship, in love, and in all relations. We can get there, but it needs a little work and a lot of focus. And focus is the key thing, because if you have a smartphone in your reach right now, I mean, if you're touching it right now, we're all a little distracted. We're being pulled in a million different directions, and everybody's competing for our attention. We are relating with people in a fragmented way based on quick judgments. We are dulling our feelings and gobbling up meals of anxiety. The question to think about today and to discuss if you're watching live and chat is, what does it take for you to love the wholeness of you, and how can you experience this in the connections with other people? I know that's a big question, but it's really important. So think about it. My guest today was forced to explore the wholeness of who he is after experiencing a physical injury. Do you relate to that? Yeah. So joining me today in the studio is Marc. Right?
You got it before.
I got it.
You've got this.
I got it.
No CH.
No CH. Stcherbina. See, I do this every time. I practice
it like 10 times.
and it's so good.
Perfectly.
And then I get totally intimidated. This is real stuff. This is why I do the show live, because I could sit here and practice all day.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for doing it live.
Okay, so Stcherbina.
No.
So I'm adding like 3 more syllables that it's needed.
You pronounce it completely differently to what you said before.
I know. There's
Everyone,
something.
hi, my name's Marc Stcherbina.
Stcherbina. What is wrong with me?
No.
Okay.
Just a name.
It's Stcherbina. I'm gonna say it I'm gonna make a song up and post it to my Instagram to know that I've got it.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. Okay. Marc Stcherbina. He's a former professional rugby player from Australia, if you didn't get that already. After a serious neck injury, it prematurely ended his sporting career. He embarked on a personal growth journey to help him transition into his next phase of life. Marc now uses his story and passion for emotional intelligence, yes, to support leadership development and needs of athletes and businesses. He is also an advocate for mental health and one of the proud original members of the Global Mental Health Alliance and the SameHere movement created by the organization We Are All a Little Crazy. And we're going to talk more about that because that's how we got connected. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and discuss all these great, juicy things.
I've been looking forward to this conversation because of the conversation that we had with Eric and you on the phone. Eric is the founder of We Are All a Little Bit Crazy, and it's just, I said it to you on the phone, and I think I said it to Eric again. It was just so nice to be in the middle of like hearing how you guys connected, what you're passionate about, and how you were speaking to each other in such admiration and friendship and love and presence and all. It was awesome. It was good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great, and just had a conversation with him earlier on today. That man is very, very inspiring, and And again, proud to be involved with what he's created, which is incredible. And as you said, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, he should be. So we're going to hear your story first, and then we're going to talk more about Eric and the organization. So the question that I like to ask everybody that sits down with me, especially after I share something like, hey, this is what's pulling my attention, is what has your attention right now?
I think I mentioned to you before on the way here downtown, I was in the car and reached out to, I've been checking in on a buddy of mine who's going through a tough time physically. He's had multiple back surgeries. He's only 45 years of age and he's bedridden basically at the moment, one of my best friends. And I know he's struggling with it. I resonate with it because he identifies with being able to move, and his body's a very active person. He's a sportsman, he's a musician, and not having the use of his body, I can really relate to, and I worry about him. He's a super positive guy, so optimistic, but this has got him struggling emotionally, and I feel for him, and it reminds me. We'll talk about the injury I went through, but just brings me back to being grateful for being able to move. And again, I think of people out there that take their bodies and these vehicles for granted. Yeah. And just the whole mind-body connection as well, how important it is to keep our bodies healthy, to keep our minds, and vice versa. So that's what's pulling at me at the moment. Just to shout out to Brucey, with your buddy, you know that, and just want you to get better. Yeah,
I'm sending love to him too. I like Brucey.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's send him some love. So let's talk about your story. So what you can begin wherever you want, but talk about that. The physical injury that kind of changed everything.
Sure.
Really.
I'll start with that. Broke my neck playing rugby. Played professional rugby for 12 years.
What's your team?
Teams. I was quite the journeyman, Stephanie, with rugby, but that was part of what was an amazing career in the world travel that was involved, and the experiences I was able to have playing rugby. So I played in Sydney for 5 years professionally in an international competition. It's called the Super Rugby. So that allowed me to travel to New Zealand and South Africa specifically, and great times, wonderful rugby, great friendships. And then there was an opportunity that came along to play abroad, to play in Europe for a French team. And not just any French team, but it was Biarritz, which is a holiday destination. It's world-renowned. It's a beautiful place, and it's right on the Atlantic Ocean, so it's near the Spanish border. I mean, what player wouldn't want to go and play in Biarritz for a very good team as well in the French National Championship? So I was offered a 2-year deal. It was a tough decision because I was only 24 years of age at the time, and my career was taking off, you could say, in Australia. But there were some barriers there that I felt to really be at the top of the national team without getting too much into it. I decided to turn my back on all of that and go overseas and experience learning a new language, just living in a totally different part of the world, and being in Europe, on Europe's doorstep, being able to travel, which I did. So 2 years there, which then led to a year in England. And then from there, I was signed for 4 years in Cardiff in Wales, which, exactly. I mean, I would never have thought that I would end up playing rugby in Wales, which is about probably 2 hours west of London. So again, I had access to England and jump on EasyJet whenever I wanted and fly to Rome on the weekends. It was just a wonderful lifestyle, but it came at a price, and that is bashing my body every day and on the weekends to play this sport that afforded me this kind of lifestyle. And it ended up in a neck injury, which had me completely paralyzed from the neck down for a good 25 minutes. And that was playing against a French team when I was playing for the Newport Gwent Dragons, which is a professional team in Wales. And that was a life changer.
When you go into a sport that has combat involved in it, do you think about this? I mean, do most athletes think about the risks that they're taking with their bodies, or that they might suffer an injury? Like, was it in your ether before this happened that this could happen to you?
I can't speak for all athletes, but for myself, absolutely. And you think about it more, I feel, when you're less than at your best. So you're conditioning yourself for the contact. I've been playing since I was 5 years old. So that kind of takes out any of that fear of contact because you just so used to, like a boxer, you're so used to getting hit.
So I'm taking boxing lessons right now, and I saw Manny Pacquiao in a fight, I think it was early in his career, with a gentleman from Mexico, I don't remember his name, and I watched him get hit into the ropes, and it looked like he was going down, and then he his eyes kind of rolled back and he spun up and he came back and he won that fight. And my thought was like, what kind of conditioning does an athlete go through to be able to spring back from a moment like that? Like, what is that conditioning?
Well, exactly. You need to prepare for those moments. And then that allows you mentally, that's building that resilience.
You're getting socked all the time in practice, basically.
For sure.
Yeah.
And if you're not,
used to it.
and that is
It'd be
actually
like us getting in car crashes all the time. Like,
oof, yeah. I mean, I guess just with bodies. That's a frightening analogy, but it does feel like a car crash sometimes. And you need to, as a result, you need to physically condition yourself. So that's where you get in the gym. I mean, I was way heavier. I put more muscle on my frame than it really should handle, so that I could handle the hits. I could deliver, I could dish out the hits, and I could also take the hits. And that is when you feel, that's what I mean by when you feel your strongest, when you feel like you have that weight on you and you don't have many injuries also, that's where you feel like you are mentally able to go and handle that kind of combat or the contact. It's when you're struggling a little bit, you might, and it's funny because that day that happened, I was not supposed to play. I came down with a 24-hour bug that had me losing a lot of fluid. Sorry, viewers, from both ends.
It's okay. We go there sometimes.
Okay, so
it's relatable.
I mean,
it's real.
I'm sure everybody can relate when you've felt like this. And I felt depleted. I felt sick. I hadn't eaten anything. I could barely eat. I think my pre-match meal was a piece of toast. I could finally stomach a piece of toast. And the doctor gave me the option. The team doctor actually said, I would rule you out, but obviously it's not my call. The coach, I'm going to advise that you don't play, and I'm going to advise you. But it's a big game. It's like, are you able to play? So I'm handing over the responsibility, and of course.
And there's so many variables to that, right? Making your coach happy, being there for your teammates, and really just wanting to play, right?
Wanting to play, and then we can talk about it a little bit more, because this is also the stigma that's involved. It is like, I can push through, and I want to show that I'm mentally strong and I've got this. And yet, absolutely, the teammates thing. It's my team. We've come so far, and I don't want to let them down. And you just get in that zone. I've traveled with the team, and we're in the hotel. We're all in our gear. They are, and we've gone through so much. Not just that week, but the entire season. We're halfway through the season, so it's like, I got this. It's okay. And even. Give me half a game and let's see where I'm at. And the adrenaline just takes over. So I got as many fluids as I could into me, and I psych myself up. And once you're at that stadium and you run out and there's a roar, you forget about how you're feeling, or that I was on the toilet the entire night. Sorry again, viewers. And then you're in it. You're in the moment. And it was shortly after half time, and we were close. This was one of the best teams in Europe. We were not supposed to be as close on the scoreboard to them, but we were. So even though I was feeling, again, I said, give me a half, I can go back out there and just give a little bit more. I'm in this, and I feel like we've got a chance here. And 7 minutes into the first half, that's where I broke my neck.
So we've shared that picture in our story today, because it's the 10-year.
That was 10 years. It's gone now to December 2008.
Okay.
It was 2008 on my birthday.
On your birthday, even.
That happened on my birthday.
What does it feel like to look at that picture today?
It brings me back immediately, and I have emotions. They're not as strong because of how far I've come since then. And my perception around it all is that I see it as a life-changing event for the better. I attach that moment and that photo that triggers that moment and remembering that moment as a positive thing. It's created so many opportunities. I'm grateful. I mentioned that before. I can walk because for 25 minutes I wasn't sure if I would ever walk again. And there are some vivid feelings. They start to fade over time. More importantly, I feel very grateful when I see that.
Can you kind of recall, so you're in that moment and you can't get up, and what that journey, so now what did that journey look like from, okay, what are the feelings that are happening, like, can I play again, who am I, to where you are today? What is that?
Great question. And it's been quite a journey, and it's continuous. It's a constant practice and transition, I guess is the word. I'm still in transition. At the time that happened, exactly what you said. What does this mean? There was shock. First and foremost is I've had injuries before, but this is different. To not be able,
you could tell.
Well, to not be able to move, and all I felt was a sharp pain, which is where the vertebra was broken, and nothing else, and just kind of felt like rubber. There was that confusion of like, why can't I? What's happening? And then when the team doctor ran out, Dee Clark, hey Dee, she grabbed my hand apparently, and she thought, is it the shoulder? Is it, because when they first rush out, it's like, okay, what's going on? A pile of bodies jumps off you, and then you're just left there. She knew something was up when she grabbed my hand and she says, okay, does this hurt? And I said, does what hurt? And then it was almost, when we talk about it, she was so fantastic that day, but for her, it's a very tough, she's a trained professional, but it's not easy for her to deal with that. So I even felt her emotion of like, she knew what was going down and just called over more people, because we're gonna have to stabilize his neck. It's a neck injury, he's got no feeling. Okay, we gotta get this guy off. And in that, I mean, that took a long time because they're so careful with the neck. It took 10 minutes for 7 trained medics to come out and get my body onto a stretcher to get me off the field without, while keeping my neck stabilized. So that's a long time to sit there without feeling and just have everybody fuss over you, and there's that urgency that's, while they're also trying to calm you down. There was a point where I started breathing really heavily.
I can't even, from going from a moment of I'm here with my team, there's the big element of this game and where I am in the world, to everybody's focused on me.
Right.
I don't even know if you could describe that, but like, to think about how that changed so significantly.
Just when you said that then, you're absolutely right. You're in the game, you're in the moment, you're about the team, you're about the score, you're about the next play. It took me completely to, as you said before, am I going to walk again? So I had all these voices going on in my head. Is it okay? My life, it's almost like that cartoon devil and the cartoon angel. It's like, that's it, your life's over as you know it. What's the point? Like really dark thoughts coming in because this is a new experience.
But this is, and I think this is an identity story, and you can tell me if you feel this way or not, but your identity was a professional athlete, and now you're disconnected from that, or like, what am I going to do? Who am I?
And my mind,
where's my wholeness?
My mind, and it's funny that it should just be, you'd think that I would be present and be like, okay, and there was elements of that. It's like, okay, we don't know what it is yet, just calm down, stop making yourself freak out. And then I would freak out, and then I would I started imagining putting ramps, and this is no joke, putting ramps in my house. And trying to be positive about it. I've been, again, as a professional athlete, so conditioned to thinking about the positives, and I've had so many injuries, and the mindset I've been trained to go into, right, it's recovery. All you can focus on is get the body right so you can get back out on the field. And there's almost that mental resilience that kicks in. So I was countering these dark thoughts of like, who am I? My life's over as I know it. Will I be able to walk? Will I be able to do anything? Can I handle that? To absolutely you can. There's opportunities here. There's Paralympics if you're even paralyzed. You can get ramps in your house. So many people live with. It was back and forth the entire time. A lot of noise in my head.
Yeah. You didn't need social media for fragmentation. You were like, it's all here.
Yeah, I had my own little private Instagram nightmare going on in my head. And then finally got off the field. But here is what it's important for me to go to that. I see that photo. That was in the moment of panic and confusion and shock. Shortly after, there was a life-defining moment, which was the relief of finally getting feeling back in my legs. And it was instantaneous. They were unstrapping me because the ambulance arrived. And as they're unstrapping me now, I've been just still, and I've come out, they've got oxygen on me, so my heart rate's now down, and I'm almost accepting of my situation, and just, obviously I need to go to the hospital. As they're transferring me, the little strap just kind of whipped my toe, and it had me flinch. I was like, oh. And straight away that registered as, ow. And then I started wiggling my toes. Stephanie, I can tell you now that all the worry and the panic just disappeared. I almost call it, again, just being mentally resilient. All the injuries I've had, they've always worked out okay. I've had surgeons that have looked after me, and I've been able to fix whatever was broken. And this was no different in my mind, because that's going to recover. That means that if my leg can move, I'm not a quadriplegic, I'm not even a paraplegic. I'm going to get feeling back. It's going to come back. I'm going to be fine. Ish.
All right, let's talk about the ish period.
Right.
What happens? So you're getting feeling back. You're like, cool, I'm going to be able to play again. Like, oh, was this like a month?
I'm not necessarily thinking I'm going to play again. I just started with, I'm going to walk again. I knew that. There were, and that is, I'm 32 years of age. I'm at the end of my career. So they weren't necessarily thoughts of, I'm going to be able to play again. Yes, as I recovered, there was a possibility, but my focus was mainly walk again. And this is probably the end of my career, but wasn't thinking too much about that at that stage. I zeroed in on the recovery, because there was still a lot of unknowns. Remember, my toes wiggling. I'm not,
You're not
flailing. I love dancing. I didn't jump up and say, all right, false alarm, everyone, I'm good. Get me back out there.
What's the score? I'm in.
I had emergency surgery that night, and they fused my C4 and C5 together, which they had to do. And I had not permanent, obviously, but nerve damage in my right arm because of the impact. So there was a lot of unknowns still. That took a year to be able to even just pick up a couple of pound dumbbells. And there was no knowing how much it would recover. That's the nature of neural damage. It recovers very slowly, and there's no way of them saying, you're going to recover to 70% and 70% only. It's like, we'll just have to see what happens. So that was a long journey, and I lost a lot of weight as a result. But my neck felt great. I rehabbed the neck to the point where I was telling myself I'm going to play again. I just recovered so quickly from the neck, and then it was all about, well, let's see how quickly this arm recovers, because if it doesn't, there's no way I'll play again. But it's on track. 6 months into that, it was evident that I'm done. It's silly to even think about playing rugby again, especially at 32 years of age. And especially that I just signed an insurance policy that covered me if I played again. That was forfeited. So I'm like, I really should just take the money and run. And look at the big picture here, which I did.
So what did that look like? What did the big picture?
The big picture?
Yeah.
Wow, that's another conversation.
This is going to be a big answer, I think.
I'll do my best to keep it as concise as possible and just pick out the highlights. So firstly, as you already mentioned, once the body was on the way to recovery, and I dealt with that, and things were looking up in that department, now there was the personal identity of who am I? Once I accepted that I was not going to play rugby again, there were some challenges around detaching myself from that identity. It's scary. And through that process of having that all come to the surface, I was forced to look at who I was, and also forced to admit that I've got some work to do, because it brought up a lot of insecurities. It brought up a lot of feelings and emotions that were new and raw that I knew wouldn't serve me moving forward into the next stage. In fact, during that period now, I was, my girlfriend at the time, we'd broken up. So it was a traumatic time for me and her. There was a lot of guilt around that. She nursed me back to health. So now I'm out of my relationship. I was renting out my house, so I didn't even have my own house. I was staying with a friend at the time, buddy of mine. And I just lost my career. There are three big pillars of what you would consider support and stability that are no longer there. And while I was dealing with that, I'd never had these emotions come up where I felt lonely. I felt there was a lot of anxiety. I was covering that up. I'm not a big drinker traditionally, and I started drinking heavily. And there was a 2-week period where I was really starting to spiral downward. I was on the top of a slippery slope. And fortunately, I had that support structure around me in my teammates. And it was
somebody pointed out to you? Or
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was my teammate, Xavier Rush at the time, New Zealander. And we were just having coffee one day, and all I was talking about was, well, what if? And I was just in such a state. I'd just broken up, and was it the right decision? And what am I going to do for a career? Do you think I should play again? Do you like, what if? I'll never be able to do that again. What if I don't? He just said, stop. Okay. And he pulls out this book. He said, mate, you need this more than me. I'm reading it right now. And it's called The Power of Now.
Read it. I recommend it. It's a great book.
If you haven't,
you
should. It was a game changer. It was a life changer. So it just had me bring myself to the present moment. That was the main takeaway from the book, is like I was everywhere but right now. I was so worried about the future. I was so stuck in what I learned in the book as well was in my ego and how destructive that can be. And that was the first alarm bell and awareness piece that woke me up to like, okay, yes, this is how you move forward. And you have a lot of work to do.
At what point, if I'm jumping too far ahead, you're going to tell me. So at what point did you write this amazing article about mental health and athletes and what you go through? Like, how far after reading that book was that?
That was a good 8 years, 7 or 8 years. So yes, what brought me up to that point was that kicked me off. That book kick-started my personal growth journey. It's a long journey, as we've discussed before. That book led to another book, which is kind of like a Bible of mine, which is The 4 Agreements.
Yes, I love that book too. We'll recommend all of these. I think my tipping point was either The Road Less Traveled and Scott Peck, or Getting the Love That You Want by Harville Hendricks.
Oh, well, good.
I recommend that one more than any other book that I've ever recommended.
Give them all. Bring them all.
We'll put them all in the archives too.
Thank you. I'm a sponge for that, because I know how good they've been for me and how important they are to keep checking back in and reading that and reminding yourself what's important, how we move forward. And books became workshops as well, and training courses around emotional intelligence. So how excited you got when you said that at the start. And just learning all of this for myself and moving forward through my transition and gaining that self-confidence again in my identity. Remember, I had an identity crisis at times, now still do, because takes a long time to detach from that. I might have been a professional rugby player for 12 years, but I played since I was 5. I played competitively since I was probably 8 or 9 or 10 years old. So that's a long time to kind of be able to condition yourself to think, well, this is why people like me. This is why I get admiration.
That's really important, actually, that statement, I think, because we do, when we get a little feedback on some parts of our identity, then we're like, oh, people love me for this. And whether it fits your life or is accurate, we do that's human nature to kind of.
It is human nature.
Connect to that.
The danger of that is, at the time, I was ill-equipped and uneducated to the point where I couldn't see that was my ego that it was feeding.
Yeah.
I thought that was me that was feeding. At 32 years of age, when I read The Power of Now, I'm able to actually look in the mirror and think, oh, this is my relationship with this is what the ego is,
yeah.
and this is my relationship with it. And all this time, I've just been feeding it.
Yeah.
And now it's important to be able to just step out of it, look back in, and work on not feeding it and what feeds it, and be okay with it. We can go on all day about the science and all that stuff. But for me, 7 to 8 years later, I find myself in America. I moved here 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. Again, on my transition, it's like, what is next? And I'm going to take my time with it, is what I told myself. And you can kind of get used to that too, of just like, all right, this is good and cruisy, and but what I need to do is just get moving again and get busy on redefining myself and getting in touch with who I really was. And this work I've been doing has been fantastic for that. So back to that article, when a former teammate of mine, an Australian rugby player, a very high profile player, Dan Vickerman, he died by suicide. Yeah. He took his own life. It rocked the sporting world, the rugby world, definitely, but it also sent waves around the sporting world. And from that, as is what often happens, a lot of celebrity campaigns were created to discuss mental illness, mental health. There was one called Lift the Weight, which means, well, he mustn't have been able to talk about it. This is common, especially in male athletes.
Athletes are not sitting around the locker room talking about their feelings, are they?
They are not.
No.
They are not. And because there is a vulnerability involved there, and there is a fear and a stigma that if you do that, you'll be cast aside. If you do that, the coach might find out and think, well, he's not mentally stable enough to be on the team, or teammates will alienate you. There's a myriad of reasons why you would just stuff it down and keep it to yourself, which I've done. And it's liberating learning how powerful it is to actually release it and talk about it and acknowledge it. Yeah. Well, acknowledge it first in yourself. Yeah. And then to be courageous enough to bring it up to people in the name of receiving support.
Which is a whole nother level of strength, right? That being vulnerable to share that. I mean, it's not easy. That's some tough stuff. I mean, you're not maybe lifting 100 pounds of weight, but it's pretty tough to do.
Well, it is, because we don't do it because we fear being judged. Yeah. And the sad part is that's not a made-up thing a lot of the time. You get judged. Yeah. You do get judged. So that'll lead us into the conversation about breaking that stigma. It's important for people on the other side of that, when they hear things, to not judge and relate it to themselves and think it's okay, to be able to provide a safe space for that person that wants to express it.
I would say on that, because I'm always on the vulnerable side, and I probably share too much, and people have been on the receiving of that. And I try to empathize, like, okay, what did that feel like for them? And it, who knows what's going on there? But I think being on the receiving side of someone sharing something like that is just say thank you for sharing. If you can't say anything else, just say thank you for sharing, because something in that person, I'm pointing to myself because I'm thinking of a current situation that we'll talk about off camera, and he knows about it too. But in that moment, like, being able to, I felt good. I felt something strong enough to share it with someone, and it's almost like a gift. I'm not saying me being vulnerable with someone is a gift, but me seeing you enough and feeling safe enough and feeling like you're somebody special too, and I want you to know what's going on with me, there is something really special about that. There is connection in that moment. So if you can't say anything in the moment, just say thank you for sharing. It's totally cool. I get it, how that can be hard. And you can come back to it. And that's the beauty of conversation, I think. Totally. You don't have to start and end a conversation. a relationship actually is nothing more than an ongoing conversation, really, if you look at it.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
Yeah. So anyhow, I had to stop.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
So to finish off that point, my apologies about Dan who passed away. All this awareness is now being brought to the surface. Traditionally, when that happens, it has people's attention focus on, yes, there is a problem. There is a problem with athletes, people that you think live in this fantasy world. It's all romanticized what they do. They make millions of dollars. They have millions of people revere them and admire them. You don't know what's going on or how much pressure that can impose on an athlete. And here is an example of that it's real. Great. Awareness, campaigns, people are talking about it. Then the talk dies down, and then it goes back to what it's always been. Yeah. That was my thought and feeling at the time, which is why I felt compelled to write an article, because remember, I've just been on a 7 or 8 year personal growth journey that I believed if I had this, if I'd learned, I had to go and do it myself. Not everybody has either the desire or the wherewithal or the get up and go to be, you know what, I need to work on myself. I'm going to go and find out what I can do and ask for support. Sometimes, which is fine, resources need to be provided. People just need a helping hand and to be guided. So I thought to myself, I could be wrong, but if Dan Vickerman had received some of the coaching, the emotional intelligence, education, and support in some kind of program during his career, he may still be with us today. Those pressures that he experienced, and he was 5 years retired. So remember, he no longer plays the game. I just felt that perhaps with some of that, he would be more able to detach himself from that sporting identity and be able to live his next phase of life with happiness and excitement, as opposed to, I'm no longer this person anymore. Who am I? What's the point? 2 little boys, beautiful boys, and a beautiful wife he left behind. So it's real. So I wrote the article saying, let's go a little deeper. The awareness is great. Now on the back of this awareness, let's say we need some programs, we need some education, and this is how it looks. Maybe I just gave some examples because of what I'd been through, and maybe
you had no intent. You just needed to get that out. You had no intention on what's going to happen. Yeah, I needed
to get it out. It was just my thoughts. I put it on LinkedIn, and it was like, oh, that felt good, because that is what I believe, and I would have loved that when I was playing in my career, because I'd be well ahead of the journey that I'm on right now. But that's okay that I'm not, because I'm able to be more present, or able to be present. The response from that article was the likes and the comments was the main thing, because it just resonated with people. And more importantly, in the sporting world, I had former coaches reaching out to me, I had athletes reaching out to me, I had them commenting saying, you should absolutely, this sounds like a great program. I had them messaging me privately, do you want to make this something? I jump on board with you. And I was like, whoa. So Steph, in that moment, it was a pivotal moment. It was like, this feels good. This feels like it could really help, and I'm passionate about it. And I'm telling my story. I'm using my story. I'm using my own experience. I think this is what I should do. This is what I should at least pursue and see where it goes. And I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. So tell me about. I was going to ask at the beginning. What does this mean?
This mean?
Yeah.
Well, this is a clue into why my Instagram handle is @YogsLife. Yog's life. I love a dad joke too. So instead of a dog's life, a Yog's life. Not a lot of people get it. This stands for young, older guy. Young, older guy. And the very...
Could it be generations so I could be included in this? Because...
Yeah, it has become that.
I'm relating to this.
This is... Okay, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. And I love that, because that's the feedback that I get constantly. Is like, it started off with me, and I mentioned Bruce at the start, who's struggling with his back. We were living together at the time years ago. He's a Yog. We're the Yog fathers of this concept. And we just created this thing because when we got into our mid to late 30s, we started to feel like we've become the single guys at the time, and we've become the old guy now in the bar that's just like with all these young people. It's like, man, it just hit home for both of us. We laughed about it and cried about it, but we laughed about it mostly. And said, yeah, but we're still young. We were like consoling each other. We're still young, we're active, and we were young at heart, young in mind, body, and soul. So it shouldn't matter what age you are. Forget what people perceive. We're young, we're older, we're not old. We're older than we used to be. We're all older than we used to be. So let's have that mindset to help us. And we're young at heart as well, so we're young, older guys. We're not just the old guys or older guys. We're like, this is brilliant. And then we were actually traveling at the time, and kept talking about it. It's like, is that a yog? Is he a yog? We giggle to each other. It's like, this yog thing's really, it's making us feel very, very happy and satisfied with ourselves. Maybe we should share this with the world. We could start a blog, call it the Yog Blog. Yogblog.com.
I love a good pun.
See? Members can yog in. I mean, it's just, it was endless. The list was endless of where we could take this. It was then just about, are we going to stop talking about it or actually do it? It became, and still is, a fun side project. The Yog Blog was born probably 2015, and it's been going, but it was just me, and he's a holistic doctor. I was a personal trainer at the time, so the blog was about balance, about health. He would blog about holistic medicine and health approaches. I would talk about training and fitness and nutrition, and then also just a bunch of fun stuff and get other people. I brought them to life with Yog Talks. I did 5 of those on the west side of LA.
I love this because, I mean, we both are mental health advocates, and sometimes when you say that to someone, I think a lot of judgment comes up. Because we do have some awareness that other people don't, and you want them to have it. But I love that part of mental health awareness is playfulness and joy and just fun. You know, like is really committing to having fun. Because I believe that commitment part, or just committing to a moment, whatever that moment, whatever type of moment that you want, is a big part of all of this because of all the distractions that we live in. So you can say, no, I'm committed to having a drink at a bar with my friend and being goofy, and more than being online or whatever else I could be doing, you know? So I like this.
I love that you said that's beautiful. I love that because I need to remind myself constantly in this crusade to get my message out there and also to work on myself. I can tend to take myself seriously, and you know, part of the reason why my girlfriend, Kristen. Hey, Kristen.
We're going to talk about that too.
Oh, yeah? Oh, good. I just wanted to get her in
I'm glad you brought it up first.
I mean, she is just pure joy. So to have her constantly remind me of, you know, be joyful. It's like, you're right. I get to be joyful, and it's so important.
I love that. And so you're not going to be surprised what I've said it, because I've said it on the phone when we were all talking, and Eric was kind of playfully dogging you out on this too. And like that, so this guy, you know, this tough rugby player. This yog over here posts really charming pictures with this girlfriend, and just really shows the wholeness of that relationship in a really fun and playful way. And I think it's very inspiring. I think it's very cool. I think more people need to do it. I mean, women will do it. We'll do it. You know, like and I'm sure there's more cases than not where the guy's reluctantly like, don't post that, babe. Like, don't say that. And it's nice to see. It feels like you're equally in it. Like you feel good about posting it.
Well, I do. Again, what you said, that comes up from time to time from conditioning. From our image. We're so used to wanting to project a certain image, and it's practice for me. Coming from a rugby, a male-dominated contact sport, that's absolutely the stigma and the image you're always trying to portray is massive. I mean, what even is that man? Being a man, it's that we can. That's a whole other topic. But it's even good practice for me to, when I want to post or I'm about to post, I always check in with my intention. And I check in, why am I posting
Super
this?
Important.
Why am I about to post this? And there's a number of reasons often. And I'll look at even the resistance. You said, it's like, about to post a lovey-dovey thing or something that might show a little bit of vulnerability, and the tendency is to be like, or I'm not looking quite, as manly or attractive, or we all do it. We all do it.
Yeah.
So in those moments, break through and just be, but that's me.
Yeah.
And I love my girlfriend very much, and I'm expressing that. So it's important for me to not let that resistance come in to want to be like, well, I want to look like a mysterious, cool dude, right? No, this is authentic.
Yeah.
This is, and then you tend to you go over the top of like, well, now we want to show how amazing our love is to everybody. Her and I talk about that quite often, because we have bumps in the road. We all do. Yeah. And we acknowledge to each other, we don't post that. We don't. Maybe we should, because if the intention is to inspire others.
I kind of stay in the camp of you praise in public and you do the tough stuff privately.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a Boy Scout rule that you reprimand in private.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I'd have to. I think every moment, like when you go to the point where you're going to post something, it's really what you said is you're thinking about the intention. Like, why is this? Like, why would I do this?
Sometimes it's just the intention is I'm doing this for me because this frightens the hell out of me. Yeah. If it's something where I'm like, you see some people and they're very courageous and they post because they're upset, or they're posting in themselves in a bikini when they're probably don't feel like they're at their healthiest or fittest. Yeah. It's where I'm at right now, and for me, I'm going to post this to break through that fear of being judged, of what image this might. So I love that. I love where people can just be, hey, I'm doing this, I'm using this platform to break through my own insecurities. Yeah,
and as a woman in this category, on the older side of things,
she's a yog.
Yeah, I'm a yog.
A young older gal.
Yeah, I think so. I just went through an experience recently, or I had a photo shoot, and it's with a friend that I've done in the past, and I knew that I needed to put more pictures out, and I don't do it because I know at this point in my life the wholeness of me, and that doesn't come across in posting a pretty picture, and I don't want women especially to think that's their whole identity of just this is how I looked in this outfit, in this bikini, or whatever. And I had that kind of breakdown, sorry, Bodhi, during this photo shoot of like, I didn't really want to put hot pictures out. Like I want women in particularly to appreciate the wholeness of who they are. Right. And in this world of like everybody kind of picking up fragments and not loving seeing the whole. So I'm still in this space. Like we'll take a picture after the show. I often say that's my mask face because I'm in hospitality mode. I want you to feel good about what we just did together, and it's not that important what's going on here. And I'm okay with not having a perfect picture out there because I know who I am. But I had to keep doing that to get to this awareness. So I'm just going to leave that at that. Like there is something about what you said of like, am I doing this for me? What's my intention? And maybe it's just for you to feel a different way about being vulnerable, and that's great.
Yes, like I said, multifaceted. So some of it is that when I post, it's like, oh, do I want to post something? What are my mates going to give me? As Eric does, in a joking way.
Oh, we're so getting there right now.
We're going to get there. When Australians, the banter, British, the banter is just they want to rip into you. So you got to have thick skin. So I'm opening myself up when I post.
I like that banter.
Pictures of it. Yeah, it's good. And that's if my approach is, and I'm secure in myself, and that wholeness of myself is intact, then it doesn't matter what people say, and I can also understand with my level of awareness of where they're coming from and have compassion rather than take it personally. Just be like, okay, so they're saying that, it's joking, but it's probably something to do with where they're at right now.
And I think that's another important point is if you put it out and if you post something and you know that you're vulnerable about it, to have awareness when somebody else takes it a different way, like, hey, I'm going through my own stuff here, so having empathy around what they've said. Like, there's a person, oh gosh, Rain, what is Rain? There is some, I'm going to put it in our recap of a person that I follow that is really, she's a non-binary person that's really talking about the gender biases of looks, everything really, and does an amazing job of handling negative comments. Like the most beautiful, loving thing that I've ever seen. Oh. And, so just thinking about that, like we're all in some weird place at any given time. Right. And not being so quick to jump on someone when they comment in a different way. You were in a weird place too when you posted it. Be honest about that.
Right. Yeah. And to even see that, to go further, to see, because I would encourage people to look at that and see it as an opportunity to practice. Always. Here's an opportunity. Somebody's posted a negative comment, an opportunity to not react, but respond in a way where you can really get in touch with your compassionate side. And with class and grace, just comment back or respond with love.
Definitely.
With love.
As a career marketing person, I've always told my clients, like, don't erase negative comments. If you get a negative review, that's actually an opportunity, because how you handle that will bind that person to life, to your brand. And other people seeing it will also feel the same way. So if you step back and go, okay, I can get where they were coming from, wasn't our best self, we didn't handle that the right way, just taking some responsibility and communicating with kindness to this human being that wrote this post, oftentimes that really comes back in a really positive way for you if you acknowledged it. So
for sure, even if no response comes back from them or just nothing, that can be satisfying. Because I took the high road.
I was real.
I was real, and I still maintained who I was and my intention for posting. And I was just going to say again, we just love to share our joy. Yeah. Kristen and I, some people might take it as showing off, or you just want to show, your life's so much better than mine. And some people will even joke like that in their comments, but there's something behind it as well. And it's understanding. It's not, we shouldn't not share just in case some people feel that way. That's where they're at. That's our intention.
I would rather put more love in the world than fear.
And that is
at the end of the day.
Because most of the comments, especially from her girlfriends, mainly from her friends, I just cop.
Yeah, it's hard for us. It's hard for us.
No, but it's normally it's uplifting to them, and with stories and things like that, because that is a big part of our intention is showing up in a way that, look at what's out there for everyone to enjoy. We recommend you just get out there and enjoy it. And if you can, it's not imperative, but if you can do it with someone like my partner, find someone like that shares that joy with you. And we just hope that it provides that inspiration for people.
I think it does.
Good.
All right, so when we sat down today, we knew we were going to go over. So this show is going to be a long show because we just have things to get to. So that's the beauty of doing your own thing. It's going to go over, and I'll clip out some stuff to make sure people get a taste of this, so they will want to watch the whole show. So the reason that Marc and I are actually sitting on this couch today together is I reached out to the founder of We're All a Little Crazy, Eric Usin. I was completely impressed with him when I learned his story, and I'm going to share a little bit about what the organization does, and then we're going to hear more from Marc of like how you got connected to Eric, what you're doing with the organization, and what that work looks like.
Right. So
here's a little bit more about We Are All a Little Crazy. So it's a global mental health movement that was formed by NCAA D1 athlete and 20-year professional sports executive Eric Usin. There's two parts to it. So there's this whole celebrity influencers sharing their mental health story with the hashtag SameHere. So just saying, hey, we're all dealing with something, and just being honest about that. And then there's the other side of it is an expert practitioner alliance that do STAR work, and what STAR stands for is stress, trauma, activity, stress and trauma, activity release, and rewiring tools, very important. So, and really, I don't even know, and this is the positive parts probably of Instagram, because I think I found them, learned about the organization through Instagram, so that's cool and positive, right? And what's really drew me to the organization is this mission. So here, listen to this. So their alliance believes that chronically stressful life experiences, trauma, both physical and mental, genetics, and a host of other factors make it so that everyone's mental health is affected in some form or another at varying levels at different points in our lives, and that mental health exists on a continuum as opposed to classifying everyone as one of the five that's mentally ill or you're normal and you're not. To hammer out the home that points, members of the Alliance all share stories of personal challenges. So to align with that, all of the members of the Alliance share personal stories with their SameHere campaign. And Marc's story is on the website. I actually wrote a story. It's on the website. They share them out, I think, weekly, really, on Instagram. So there's people just joining this all the time, and they're doing great work. So I think it would be a good time. I have a little clip so people can understand who Eric is.
Let's have a look.
And how important he is more to you, but I hope I get to be a part of this club more, but just how amazing Eric is. So we're going to play the 60-second video now, and then we're going to talk more about Eric, and we're all a little crazy.
Great.
D?
My father's a principal, and we would sit through assemblies on drugs, but yet we didn't learn anything about health. We'd have a health class that had a course or had a section on mental health, and in mental health we learned that depression is sadness, anxiety is being nervous, and PTSD is exclusively for soldiers or people who fought more, and couldn't be further from the case. So you don't feel like you relate to any of those things. Meanwhile, those are the exact things that could develop. I'll tell you, the ironic thing about it is when I was going through the most intense version of the PTSD, my brain was so dysfunctional that I would tell people, they would ask me, what does it feel like to be going through this? And I would say I would wake up and I'd go throughout the whole day without an original thought coming to my head. I had family come down and visit, and I told them I was losing my brain, was the way that I described it. And for some reason in the back of my mind, I always had this vision of, if I get out of this, there's a way for me to help people.
And we're back. So you just learned about our friend Eric. So tell me how you and Eric got connected.
We mentioned the article that I wrote before, LinkedIn. One of the people that provided feedback was actually a radio show, a sports radio show in New Zealand. The producer of that show had read it.
Yeah.
And they were talking a little bit, they had been talking on the show about, again, this conversation about mental health and players that struggle and the measures they take, and wanted me on the show. And as I just talked about what we're talking about on the show, and then they mentioned, well, I actually mentioned John Kirwan, which is a rugby legend. He played for the New Zealand All Blacks in the 1987 World Cup. He is a big advocate for mental health and specifically suicide prevention. He spoke out a lot. Now, again, this is one of the biggest names in the game, leading the way in terms of telling his story of when he struggled while he was playing, let alone when he retired. So depression, anxiety, he has a number of foundations and supports a number of others, and he'd been in contact with Eric Usin when Eric started this whole concept and wanted to bring athletes that have been vocal about mental health and their struggles to step forward together and form this alliance. So John Kirwan, I was connected to him because he knew about Eric and thought, hey, there's a guy on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. I think because he travels around a lot and can't always be in America, he connected the two of us and said, I think you would be, what you're doing and what you're talking about and expressing would be great for his organization, because Eric just wants athletes to come in that are already telling and vocal on their platforms. Was introduced to him, loved what he was in. We're just starting it up, so I'm very proud and honored to be one of the first athletes that was brought on board. And you see in that video was a lot of that was filmed at the launch event in New York, and I was lucky enough to be one of the ambassadors for that from the sport of rugby. And he had Olympic swimmers, Amanda Beard and Anita Null and Theo Fleury from the NHL hockey. He's amazing, and he is just leading the charge. Just amazing to be around these athletes. Tyler Hamilton that rode with Lance Armstrong, the stories these people had brought us all together, and it just felt really special. And thanks to Eric for creating that. He put a lot of work in, still does on a daily basis, and it's growing. There's over 50,000 people telling their story on Facebook. Yeah. And the idea is for it to keep growing. This isn't a one-off, one-and-done campaign that I spoke about before. They're great. They come for a month, celebrities get on board, and then it dies down. Yeah. This is an ongoing thing. I'm very proud of him.
Very proud of him. And it's not just the social media, SameHere, everybody sharing their story. Mm-hmm. There's actually programming that he's committed to for schools, for veterans, for companies, to really shift our culture a little bit around the stigma around mental health, and just preparing us. I think preparing children to understand what this is. I mean, I think the video that we just played says it all. Like, we do not get the benchmarks for how to deal with life's challenges in school. Nobody tells us how to have a difficult conversation. Nobody tells us how to deal with your anger, your sadness, none of that. And it's so key. It is so important. So I love knowing about this. I love knowing about the work that he's doing and who he's attracting into the organization. Is there anything that really speaks to you that that's going on right now, or that you will continue to be involved, or you're getting excited about some of the things that are being talked about right now?
Great, yeah, thank you for that, because I was just about to mention, and Eric didn't necessarily know what it would look like. He just, his story is unbelievable, and I get to share this, and I'm going to use my connections to get other people on board and strength in numbers. And then it's evolving into this thing where it's gaining momentum, and mental health and emotional intelligence specifically gets to cover, and if possible, you mentioned it, the younger that this kind of education can be delivered and absorbed, the better, setting kids up for adulthood to be, for a better life. And he acknowledged that college athletes also have a very unique situation, and there's a lot of incidents of depression and anxiety because of the pressures, particularly student athletes. So they are playing at a high level as 19 to 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds, all this immense pressure that's being put on them to perform for this money-making machine that is college sport, while at the same time they're expected to be studying, keeping up with their grades. That's a lot of pressure for college athletes. So he created and embarked on this college sit-down tour of America, and he was reaching out to colleges saying, this is what I want to do, bringing athletes like myself on board and saying, are you available to come and speak to this school? And he just went from east to west coast. I actually went out, again, lucky enough, his alma mater is Cornell, so I did the very first sit-down tour with him. Darren Reveld, who's huge on Twitter and commenting on sports as a journalist and reporter, and it was Theo. Theo wasn't with us at the time, but he joined halfway through. So going to all these colleges and just seeing, it was so special, because if they tried to create a safe space, again, to have a discussion, because that was it. It was a lecture, but then the main part was like, now it's your opportunity. And you saw some brave athletes. They felt safe enough to bring up either their own struggle or ask a question that suggested that someone they know was struggling with that. Questions like, how do I deal with someone that comes to me and says they're depressed and they're thinking of killing themselves? Like, these kind of discussions were happening. Now, if the students, we'd experienced that, or afterwards, students that didn't feel quite safe enough would come up, we'd hang around afterwards to talk to the students, and they would then come and express what they just were so moved to express and felt safe enough, and like, you get it, thank you. And then emails, and then parents writing in, my son or my daughter went to this thing last night, thank you so much for what you're doing. So it's a wonderful thing.
All I can think of and feel and say in this moment is, you cannot underestimate the importance of a conversation or a well-timed question. And he probably, when Eric started, he didn't know, what this was going to look like. He just said, let's bring people together, and just getting out there and getting on a stage, getting people to talk, letting them voice their questions, and being there to answer them. it's the basic ingredient of what we can do in our interpersonal communication and what we need, you know, and on all of our lives. That's so important.
It is.
This conversation.
I know what drives Eric. It's important to mention as well, or to reiterate, that he is driven by the fact that he wants to change this conversation and this notion that people think and talk about mental health as it's separate. It's disease, disorder. Even a lot of the campaigns are about, and I use the analogy of someone's, you know, maybe raising money for the homeless. People are homeless or they're not homeless, and it's kind of like, well, let's try and help the homeless. Eric used this analogy of cancer. You know, we don't talk about different kinds of cancers, one being serious and worth having more of a conversation about than this kind of cancer is more curable, so therefore we're going to focus on that and talk about that. It's like cancer's cancer. When you have cancer, you have cancer. His message is same as mental health, is it's a continuum. We all experience struggle on some level along that continuum, and we need to start having conversations like that. We all experience it. That's hence the name, We Are All a Little Crazy. He said crazy to just get people's attention, to get talking about it. It's like, that's the thing, that's what I loved about it. And then from that attention, then talk about.
And a lot of the stigma, I'm glad he said crazy, actually, because a lot of the stigma that is in this space is around how we're using certain words, and we just need to reclaim words. Like, I use nerd in my monologues. I mean, that's a good thing to be a nerd, but when you look it up in the dictionary, it's like goof, you know, like it's all this negative notation. So I think it's great to reclaim language and say, you know, we shouldn't be using it this way. That's not the right way to use it.
Exactly, and when that starts to become the conversation where it's like, oh, it's okay, it's not, I'm not going to be lumped if I express that I'm having mental struggles, I'm going to be lumped in this, oh, you've got a mental illness over here, right? It's okay. It's just,
it's part of our human path, you know, our human journey is to have ups and downs. All right, well, we love you, Eric. If you're watching, you better be watching.
He's watching.
He's
probably
watching.
on the treadmill.
Yeah, he's on the treadmill. All right. We'll talk later. Well, and I think this is a good segue to the question that everybody gets that sits on this couch. So the question is, when I say the phrase exceptional human encounter, what does it mean to you? And if you want to give an example of one, I mean, we could just say Eric, but you know, give it another example.
Well, can I kind of cheat or be lazy right now and say this
yes,
right
you
now?
Can cheat.
How many people have said that? This?
A couple.
Okay. So now three.
Yeah.
The reason I say that, it's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't need to search, because any opportunity to sit down and talk with a like-minded human being is an exceptional encounter, especially when we talk about emotional intelligence, because this is fuel for what can change the world. That's inspiring. So any encounter like that I find is exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same way. And I think, you know, often what comes up, even if it's not like we knew that we had some mind share and some connection to something that we both care about. But sometimes even conversations around where there's no connection can be an exceptional encounter too, because you're committed to the moment. And there's, in that moment, there's some wholeness that can come out, and it's like, wow, I really feel connected to this person. And it surprises you, because you went into it with that judgment, all that judgment that's in all of our brains at this point, and a lot of the reason why we do have mental health issues. I mean, a lot of it is the anxiety of this world, that we don't get a chance to sit down and process and just go, am I okay for feeling this way?
Right,
you know?
Right. And that, sorry, again, I just have to add to that. That's part of the exceptional encounter too, is that this person I'm talking to is making me feel safe.
Yeah.
Because
safety is a big word.
You get it.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm not being judged.
Yeah.
And that feels nice.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, in this world, sometimes is an exception.
Yeah.
To be able to just talk and not have the other person judge, or even feel judged by that person.
Yeah. I wish we had some little alarm when that judgment goes off, because I think it's the biggest opportunity to learn, because you know the saying, like, if you're pointing the finger at somebody else, 4 fingers are pointing back at you. And so if you're in a moment and you feel the need to judge somebody else, you're triggered. I mean, people don't like hearing that word triggered, but it's real. You get triggered. Something just kind of shifts you. You're like fine for a moment. And you're like, ooh, that landed weird. And often, human nature, nobody's guilt, there's no fault or blame in this, but we will often look to the closest object or person and put the blame there.
Totally.
And not go, ooh, something in here is not quite right, and I want to check, and I need to check in. This is an opportunity to check in.
Well, and Steph, not even realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's where the awareness is so important.
Yeah.
The first step, the education of like you said, just even, that's an expression that speaks into being judgmental,
Yeah.
one finger pointing and three finger pointing
Yeah.
back. Not everybody's heard that or
Yeah.
can even conceptualize it. So how do we encourage and how do we get that education out there and be accessible to everybody? The best thing I can think of is have it in school curriculums.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So I think that's where
100%.
we're heading. It's going
Yeah.
to take a long time. That's where Eric and we are all a little crazy, is getting into schools and educating about that continuum of mental health. And we all sit at some stage. That's brilliant. That is from a young age starting to conceptualize what it means, what emotional intelligence is,
Yeah.
and the phrases around it. And then you'd be it's kind of like having control over your own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, definitely.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful. It
And
gives you peace. I mean, honestly, I've gone through my years of growing and unlearning. There's a lot of unlearning when you start to go, oh, I need a little work here. You have to unlearn some of the things that you thought you believed in and held as values in your life. You have to undo that. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not going to lie to anybody and say any of this is easy, but I will say when you commit to it and you get on the other side of it, it does feel easier. It does feel easier, and less things affect you in the way that they used to. Like there's just a calmness, like, oh, okay, I can slow down. I would just, I'd go nutso and swear and whatever it is, but I'm good, I'm okay.
And the word I like to use is liberating.
Yeah,
so it
that's a good
becomes
word.
easier, but liberating in terms of those thoughts and the noise in your head can feel like a prison. You're holding yourself prisoner to your thoughts. So freeing yourself from that, and just again, the awareness. Awareness is the first step of like just getting to that place of, I know I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah.
I know with these thoughts that's not serving me, and I'm doing it. I'm creating it. As soon as you stop blaming and just take ownership, then you're able to break through it.
I listened to an awesome podcast over the weekend, and I'll share this in our wrap up too. And there was someone's work, and I don't remember the person's name, but I will make sure that I put it in here. But this woman's work was about like having better set of questions. And one of the questions was, who am I without this feeling? So when you're up against a feeling that you're like, I know I'm causing myself to be sad, angry, whatever it is that's not progressing you through the day, your life in the best way. If you could separate yourself from that feeling and then ask, who am I without this feeling? Whew, there's so much to be revealed right there. Who could I be?
Who could I be? What's
without
possible?
this? Yeah.
What is possible? Yeah. And even just that, and back to the very first book that I read, The Power of Now, that got me on this journey, that is important to revisit from time to time, because it can blow the mind a little bit, is Eckhart Tolle's always saying, even just that act of asking yourself that question means that that's not who you are, and you're noticing, you're stepping out of it and detaching yourself from, that's, in his words, is the ego. So when you can look at it and say, that's my ego, that is the first step to getting rid of the ego.
Well, that's a beautiful segment to the last thing that we get to do together, which is, so I'm a big believer in staying in a relationship with learning, whatever that looks like for you. So I care significantly about relational learning and all the things that we're talking about and having this awareness. So we issue a social challenge of the week every week to have the experience. And again, sometimes it's just a question. And I think what I wrote down today is just a question, but just being aware enough that you could ask yourself that question. If you don't even have all the answers in the moment that the question comes up, it doesn't matter. But just knowing that there's another way to look at things, or another, another way that you can have an experience that you continue to have in the same way. So I believe in that, and I do this all the time. I'm a constant social experiment, and some of my friends know this. I'm just like, well, what if, like what if, if I looked at it different ways. So I wrote this down, but we can do this together. So if you feel like we can, if you want to shift this, so it's kind of back to this wholeness, this concept of wholeness. So I think the question that we shared at the top of the show is a great question to ask, and maybe do it with a buddy or do it over a dinner, and with several people. And that question was, what does it take for you to love the wholeness of you, and how can you experience that, this in your connections with other people? Do you want to modify that, change that? What we want to issue is the
Can you read that one more time for me, please?
And it's a big
Steph?
question.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it take for you to love the wholeness of you, and how can you experience this in your connections to other people?
Oh, what does it take? What does it take to love the wholeness? I mean, that's beautifully put. I don't want to tamper with that too much.
You don't want to tamper.
All I can do is, when I relate to that, a question I ask myself a lot is, in that moment, what does it take to, the wholeness is there, that's the thing, is without trying to conceptualize too much of who is the whole me, easy just to go to, in this moment, who do I get to be?
Yeah.
Or who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Because it comes from action, not words. That can tend to be a thing. People tend to be very good with words. Show up. If I want to be joyful, if I want joy, then I get to be joyful. It's about starting from here rather than looking at something else to have me feel a certain way or to get a certain result.
And to get there, so I think that's 2.0 version. So if this is like a big question for you, maybe start with, well, when have I felt whole? For me, a lot of times it's music, it's art, it's something that it stops me in a moment, and I'm like, I feel that. That really, I feel connected to that. And then then why? And then why brings it back to you? Why brings it back to exactly what you just said? Well, why is that? Am I feeling this way about this moment? And like, well, I have this. I'm in control of this. Like, I can create that moment.
Oh, and can I add to that?
Yeah,
because now I love the way you put that, the wholeness and when am I whole. So explore that. What has me in that state?
Yeah.
And then I think it's important to then ask yourself, what's stopping me from being in that state? What's preventing me right now? Because that's often what we do. It's there. The wholeness is there, but we always put barriers up in front of that wholeness. What are those barriers, and why and how do I get to put them down?
Yeah.
So I can experience it.
Yeah, it's perfect. See, you did add to it. Whew, that's good. All right. I will recap all of those questions when we archive the show, so you can play with that. And as always, and I know that Marc would appreciate this too, if you do it, reach out to us. Like, let us know. Like, if there's anything that I want people to get by watching this show, is just start with a conversation. It's just that. Like, this, having human interaction, having the time, taking the time to sit with another person and get to know them and feel their presence and let yourself be seen, really is where joy comes from. It's not from objects. It's not from having any money. It's not from any identity. It's not from anything you can buy, really.
We didn't even talk about the neuroscience involved, which I know you're a big fan of. It just chemically what's happening when we have these connections.
Well, you'll know when you start, if you really spend time with these questions and you start to think about, well, when do I feel that way? Who am I with? What are the characteristics that are there, and like, how can I create? You'll know. It's people are in that. People are in your joy and love, not objects, not things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said.
All right. Well, this was awesome. This is the longest show I've ever done.
Should I be proud of that?
Yes.
Is that some record? We just broke records.
We did break records.
Yeah.
We're going to blow people's minds.
Nobody's watching right now. It's been too long.
If you stay in the show, we'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
I know it's so seductive to watch 2-minute content, but the realness of life exist in relationships and conversations between people. And so I'm going to continue to stand by this. I'm not doing 2-minute content. I just can't. Yeah.
You stand for what you believe in, girl.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
Authentic.
Authentic. All right. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I
For this
enjoyed
exceptional
it.
encounter.
Oh, thank you. And Eric, we love you. We'll talk soon.
Yes, Eric. Thanks everyone for listening and watching.
Yes. And as always, I'm just going to end the show with, what are you doing to make an exceptional encounter happen today for you and for somebody else? Bonus, 2 people. See you later.